Hi, y'all. I'm Blake from Escape to Arkansas, and I'm starting a challenge with the cheapest camera I can find. I want to see how far I can actually take this. No expensive gear, no crazy setup, just a simple $30 camera and whatever I can create with it. But here's where it gets interesting. For every new subscriber, I'm going to add 1 cent to my monthly production budget. Yeah, 1 cent doesn't sound like much, but if it grows, that means I get better gear, get better videos, and see how far this really can go over time. Plus, I'm going to learn to produce along the way. So, right now, this is literally day one of the long videos. It's literally the starting point. No shortcuts, no big investment, just building this one step at a time. And I think that's what makes it really interesting because most people think you need a ton of money to create something great. But what if you don't? What if it just takes consistency and people who want to see you grow? So if you want to follow the challenge and actually be part of me building this up, hit subscribe and let's see where this goes. So I didn't expect to learn this much from using the cheapest camera I could find. But honestly, this turned into way more of a learning experience than I thought. First thing, I had to figure out voiceovers. I ended up finding an AI voice and using CapCut. No, excuse me, I used Canva, which is actually completely free. And I'll be real, it works way better than I expected. And for something that costs nothing, it's great. But then I started noticing all the little mistakes. Like somehow I had a date stamp on the video, didn't even realize it until after I filmed everything. So now that's just there. And then one big thing, I didn't even find that I set the camera to horizontal mode while I filmed. It was in vertical mode and I had to completely redo it. It basically means I made the quality worse than what this camera is even capable of. So it's not even a fair test of how good it could have looked. We'll add that to the next video. But honestly, that's kind of the point of this whole thing. It's messy, it's not perfect, and I'm figuring out exactly as I go. Because most people think you need everything dialed in before you start. But this is what it actually looks like when you just go for it. And I think that's what makes this interesting. You're watching this from the very beginning. Mistakes, bad settings, a bad camera, random problems, random places, all of it. Zero production value. So here you go. Please give me feedback. Please listen to me talk through the random things I've learned. Or better yet, turn the video off and let the algorithm decide what to do with it. But it's up to you. You're kind of part of this now. Let's see how far we all can actually take this.
Sometimes the biggest things start with almost nothing. No budget, no plan, no audience, just an idea and a decision to try. Mr. Beast didn't start with millions of views. He didn't start with crazy challenges or massive giveaways. He started in his room, talking to a camera, uploading videos nobody watched. For years. And that's the part nobody talks about. So I wanted to see something. What would happen if I started the same way? No expensive gear, no perfect setup, no overthinking, just start. So I bought a cheap camera. Off Temu. Yeah, Temu. Probably not what you expected. And this right here, is what it turned into. And I'm telling you right now, I bet you can't stay to the end of this video. Not because it's crazy, not because it's fast, but because it's simple, and simple is hard to sit through. But if you do, you might start to see things differently. Right now, you're looking at one of the most underrated places in the country. Lake Ouachita. Most people can't even pronounce it. It's Ouachita. And somehow, that already tells you how hidden it is. This lake has over 40,000 acres of water. But what makes it different is what's not in it. There's no major development along the shoreline. No crowded resorts everywhere, no giant city wrapped around it. It's just water, forest, and silence. And here's something most people don't know. Lake Ouachita is one of the cleanest lakes in the entire United States. Like, top tier clean. You can literally see several feet down into the water, sometimes more, and that clarity changes everything. Because when water is that clear, it doesn't just look different. It feels different. And while you're watching this, just think about something. This video started with a cheap camera. No guarantee, no audience, just pressing record. And that's exactly how MrBeast started. Except he did it for years, before anything happened. Years. Imagine doing something, for years, with almost no results. Would you keep going? Most people wouldn't. That's why most people never get there. Now here's another fact. Lake Washita has over 200 islands. Some of them are tiny. Some of them you can camp on. And some of them, you might be the only person on for miles. Think about that. An entire island, to yourself. No notifications. No noise. Just you, and whatever thoughts you've been avoiding. And maybe that's why places like this feel different. Because they remove distractions. And when distractions disappear, you're left with clarity. Hot Springs, Arkansas, which sits right next to this lake, has its own story. This entire town was built around natural hot springs. Water that comes out of the ground, at around 143 degrees. Naturally, no heater, no system, just earth, doing what it does. And people have been coming here for over 100 years. Not for entertainment, not for trends, but for healing, because they believed this water had something different. And whether you believe that or not, you can't deny one thing. People traveled for something they felt, not something they were told to feel. Now think about that. Because today, most people don't experience things. They scroll past them, they don't sit in a moment. They skim it. And that's why I said earlier, I bet you can't stay to the end. Because staying is a lost skill. Back to the lake, there are parts of Lake Washita that are over 200 feet deep. That's deeper than most people expect. And beneath that surface, there's an entire world you never see. Rock formations, sunken trees, entire ecosystems, moving quietly below. Kind of like opportunity. Most of it, you don't see at the surface. MrBeast understood something early. Attention is everything. But attention has to be earned. And you don't earn attention by doing what everyone else is doing. So instead of starting big, I started small. Cheap camera, simple idea, press record. And somehow, you're still here. Cheap camera, simple idea, press record. And now, you're part of it. Still here. I told you, this wasn't about speed, it's about staying. Because if you can stay, you can build. And if you can build, you can change everything. So maybe the real question isn't, can you stay to the end? Maybe it's, what happens if you do? Because at the end of this, you don't just finish a video. You prove something to yourself. That you can focus. That you can commit. That you don't need constant stimulation to stay engaged. And that might be more valuable than anything else. So if you made it this far, you already did something most people won't. You stayed. And that's exactly how everything starts. Not with perfection, not with money, not with the best setup. But with one decision. To not quit. And if MrBeast proved anything, it's that consistency beats everything else. So this is where it starts. From scratch. With a cheap camera. And the decision to keep going. And if you're still here, you already understand. Because you didn't leave. And that changes everything. And the crazy part is, most people will never see this. Not because it's hidden, but because they're moving too fast. They're always chasing the next thing, the next video, the next distraction, the next hit of something new. But places like this, they don't reward speed. They reward attention. If you slow down here, you start to notice things. The way the light hits the trees. The way the ground changes under your feet. The way everything feels quieter, even when it's not completely silent. And that's something I didn't expect. I thought this video would just be about testing a cheap camera. Seeing what it could do. Seeing if it was even usable. But somewhere along the way, it turned into something else. Because when you remove all the noise, you start hearing your own thoughts again. And that can be uncomfortable at first. Most people don't like silence. Not real silence. Because silence doesn't distract you. It reveals things. And maybe that's why we avoid it. Here's something interesting. Lake Washita has no houses directly built on most of its shoreline. That's intentional. It's protected land, which means, when you're out here, You're not looking at backyards, or docks, or crowded waterfronts. You're looking at nature, the way it was meant to be seen. And that changes your perspective. Because you realize, not everything has to be built on. Not everything has to be optimized. Not everything has to be turned into something else. Some things are just meant to exist. And maybe people are the same way. There's this pressure now, to constantly improve, constantly grow, constantly become something bigger. But what if you're allowed to just be? That doesn't mean you stop growing. It just means you don't lose yourself trying to get there. MrBeast didn't become successful overnight, but he also didn't lose his identity chasing it. He just kept going, experimenting, failing, adjusting, and repeating. And that's what this is. An experiment. A cheap camera, a simple idea, and a willingness to see what happens. Here's another fact. The Ouachita National Forest covers over 1.8 million acres. That's a massive amount of land. And most of it, people never fully explore. Think about that. So much space, and yet, most people stay in the same small areas. Not because they have to, but because it's familiar. And familiarity feels safe. But nothing new comes from staying in the same place. That applies to this video too. Because if I waited until everything was perfect, this wouldn't exist. If I waited for the right camera, the right setup, the right moment, I'd still be waiting. And maybe that's where you're at. Waiting. Waiting for things to line up. Waiting for it to feel right. Waiting for certainty. But certainty doesn't come first. Action does. And then, clarity follows. Just like this. It started unclear, uncertain, unplanned. And now, it's something real. And you're still here, watching it unfold. Which means, something about this is working. Even if it's not obvious. Because attention, real attention, is earned slowly. Not instantly. And if you've made it this far, you're proving something most people won't. You're not just consuming, you're staying. And that alone sets you apart. And let's be honest for a second, this camera is not good. Like, at all. The colors aren't perfect. The stabilization is questionable. Sometimes it struggles with light. Sometimes it does something weird, for no reason at all. And I knew that when I bought it. I didn't expect cinematic quality. I didn't expect anything crazy. I just wanted something that worked. Something that could capture a moment without overcomplicating it. Because that's where most people get stuck. They think they need the best camera, the best setup, the best everything. But what if the only thing you actually need is something that records? Because this was filmed on something most people would overlook. Scroll past, ignore. And yet, you're still watching it. Which means, maybe the camera isn't the most important part. Here's something interesting about Arkansas. It's one of the only places in the world where you can legally search for diamonds and keep what you find. There's a place called Crater of Diamonds State Park. People go there with nothing, just tools and time, and sometimes walk away with something valuable. Think about that. You show up with nothing, and leave with something worth everything. Kind of like this video. Started with nothing, a cheap camera, a random idea. And now, it's something. Back to the camera for a second. There are moments where it actually surprises me. Where the lighting hits just right, and suddenly, it doesn't look cheap anymore. It looks real. Not overly processed, not overly edited, just what it is. And there's something about that feels more honest. Because perfection can feel fake. But this feels raw. And maybe that's what people connect with. Not perfection, but authenticity. Here's another Arkansas fact. Hot Springs National Park has 47 natural thermal springs. All coming out of the ground, at high temperatures, completely naturally. No machines, no systems, just Earth, doing what it's always done. And for years, people believed those waters could heal. And maybe they could. Or maybe, it was the act of slowing down, stepping away, and being present, that actually did the healing. Either way, people felt something here. And that matters. Just like this. This isn't the best camera. It's not even close. But it's enough. And that's the point. Because, enough, is where everything starts. Not perfect, not ideal, not optimized. Just enough, to begin. Here's something else about Arkansas most people don't know. It has more than 9,700 miles of rivers and streams. That's a lot of moving water. And if you follow any of those streams long enough, you'll realize something. They don't rush, they don't force direction. They move, consistently, around obstacles, through terrain, over time. And eventually, they get where they're going. That's the same principle here. This video doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to keep going. And that's what I'm doing. Testing, adjusting, learning. With a camera that most people wouldn't even consider using. And yet, it's working. Not perfectly, but enough. And sometimes, enough is all you need to create something real. And if you've stayed this long, you're starting to see that. Because it's not about the gear. It's not about the setup. It's about the decision to start anyway. Alright, let's talk about this camera again. Because I don't think I've been clear enough. This thing is straight Temu trash. Like, if you've ever bought something off Temu, you already know. The pictures look amazing, the description sounds convincing, and then it shows up, and you're like, there's no way this is the same product. That's this camera. The buttons feel cheap, the screen lags sometimes, the quality randomly drops for no reason, and every now and then, it just decides to do its own thing. No warning, no explanation, just chaos. And yet, here we are. Still recording, still watching, still going. Which makes me wonder something. Is this actually bad, or is it just not what we're used to? Because we've been trained to expect everything to look perfect, crisp, sharp, color graded, stabilized. And when it's not, we assume it's wrong. But what if it's not wrong? What if it's just different? Or, what if I knew that? What if I knew exactly what I was doing, buying the cheapest possible camera, just to see what would happen? What if this whole thing is intentional? Because think about it, you clicked on this, you stayed, you're still here. And it's not because of the camera quality. So what is it? Is it curiosity? Is it the pacing? Is it the fact that this doesn't feel like everything else? Or is it the question in the back of your mind, wondering if this is all a joke? Because honestly, it kind of is. Not in a careless way, but in a way that exposes something. We've been told, you need the best gear to start. You need the perfect setup. You need everything dialed in. And yet, this exists. Filmed on something most people wouldn't even take seriously. And somehow, it still works. Or at least, it's working enough to keep you here. Which breaks the whole narrative. Because if this works, then what else have we been overthinking? What else have we been waiting on, that we didn't actually need? And maybe that's the real point. Not the camera, not the location, not even the video itself. But the realization that the barrier to entry is way lower than you thought. And maybe, just maybe, that makes this whole thing a little uncomfortable. Because now, you don't have the same excuse. You don't need a better camera. You don't need a better setup. You don't need to wait. You could start right now. Just like this. With something imperfect, something flawed, something that doesn't look how you imagined. And still, create something real. Here's another random Arkansas fact. There's a place called the Ozark National Forest, and parts of it feel completely untouched. No signal, no noise, no distractions. Just miles of trees and silence. And if you walked out there with this camera, you'd probably question it. You'd probably think, this deserves something better. But does it? Or does it just deserve to be captured? Because at the end of the day, the moment doesn't care what camera you used. The experience doesn't change. Only the expectation does. And maybe that's what this is breaking. Expectation. Because if you expected high production, this probably threw you off. If you expected fast pacing, this slowed you down. If you expected perfection, this challenged that. And yet, you're still here. So now the question becomes, was this a mistake? Or was it the point? Because maybe I do know what I'm doing. Or maybe I don't. Maybe this is just a random experiment that somehow worked. Or maybe, it's exactly what it needed to be. And that uncertainty, that little bit of not knowing, is what keeps this interesting. Because if everything was obvious, you probably wouldn't still be watching. So yeah, this camera is trash. But maybe, that's why this works. Or maybe, this whole thing is just a joke. Who knows? But you're still here. And that says more than anything else. Alright, let's just go completely off track for a second. Because Arkansas has some of the most random facts you'll ever hear. For example, Arkansas produces more rice than any other state in the US, like, a lot more. Almost half of the country's rice comes from here. Which means, statistically speaking, there's a decent chance you've eaten Arkansas rice and had no idea. Think about that. You've probably experienced something from here without ever knowing where it came from. Kind of like this video. Here's another one. Arkansas is called the natural state, which sounds obvious until you realize how much of it actually is untouched. Forests, mountains, rivers, lakes, and then random small towns that feel like time just slowed down or stopped completely. There are places here where you can drive for miles and not see anything but trees. No stores, no lights, no noise, just road and whatever's ahead of you. And honestly, that's rare now. Here's a weird one. There's a town in Arkansas called Toad Suck. Yeah, Toad Suck. Nobody really knows exactly how it got the name. There are theories. None of them make it sound better. But it stuck. Imagine explaining that to someone not from here. Yeah, I went to Toad Suck this weekend. Doesn't even sound real. Another one. Arkansas is home to the world's only active public diamond mine. Not just in the US, in the world. And you can go there, dig around in the dirt, and if you find a diamond, you keep it. No catch, no fine print. People have found diamonds worth thousands of dollars, just randomly digging. Which is kind of crazy, because most people walk around every day, thinking opportunity is rare. But sometimes, it's literally just under the surface. Here's another random one. Walmart started in Arkansas. Like, the Walmart. Started by Sam Walton, in a small town called Bentonville. And now it's one of the biggest companies in the world. From a place most people couldn't even point to on a map. Which again, kind of proves the point. Big things don't always start in big places. Sometimes they start in quiet ones. Here's a strange one. There are more than 600,000 acres of lakes in Arkansas. That's a lot of water. Which means, there are entire areas people barely touch. Hidden spots, quiet coves, random places you could sit, and nobody would ever know you were there. And honestly, that's kind of the vibe here. Not loud, not flashy. Just there. Here's something else. Arkansas has one of the only naturally occurring quartz crystal deposits in the world. Like, actual crystals. People come from all over to dig for them. And again, you can keep what you find. There's a pattern here. A lot of things in Arkansas, you have to go find. They're not handed to you. They're not obvious. But they're there. Here's a random one. There are caves all over Arkansas. Some mapped, some not. And some of them go deep enough that nobody fully knows what's inside. Which is kind of wild. Because in a world where everything feels discovered, there are still places we haven't fully explored. Here's another one. Arkansas has more than 9,700 miles of rivers and streams. Which means, water is basically everywhere. Moving, changing, flowing. And if you follow it long enough, you'll always end up somewhere different. Which is probably a better metaphor than most people realize. Here's one more. Hot Springs used to be a place where people went to disappear for a while. Not permanently, but just step away. Reset. And I think that's why places like this still matter. Because not everything is meant to be optimized. Some things are meant to be experienced. Even if it's random, even if it doesn't make sense. Even if it's filmed on a terrible Temu camera. Which somehow, we're still using. And somehow, you're still watching. Which might be the most surprising fact of all. Because nothing about this should work. And yet, it does. Or at least, it's working enough. And sometimes, that's all you need. Just enough. Alright, this is where it gets a little weird. Because technically, this has nothing to do with the camera, or the lake, or even this video. But I'm going to say it anyway. My grandfather used to tell a story about how he knew Al Capone. Now, before you immediately call that out, yeah, I know how that sounds. It sounds like one of those stories that gets told just enough times that nobody questions it anymore. But the way he told it, he believed it. He said back in the day, Hot Springs wasn't just a quiet town. It was a place people came to when they didn't want to be found. Gangsters, businessmen, people with money, people with problems. And somehow, according to him, Al Capone would pass through here, like it was normal. Like it was just another stop. He said there were places downtown where deals happened quietly. No cameras, no records, just conversations. And one night, according to him, he ended up in the same room. Now, was it actually Al Capone? Who knows? Could have been a guy who looked like him, talked like him, acted like him. Or maybe it really was. Because Hot Springs actually was a hotspot for organized crime back then. That part is real. There are records of it, stories, history. So it's not completely impossible. But the way he told it made it feel like something bigger. Like Arkansas has always had these layers. Quiet on the surface. But underneath, stories most people never hear. And honestly, that fits. Because even now, you'll drive past places here that don't make sense at first. Like random trailer houses, just sitting in the middle of nowhere. Not abandoned, not broken down, just there. One light on, a truck outside, maybe a dog somewhere in the distance. And you start wondering, what's the story there? Who lives there? What do they do? What have they seen? Because every place like that has a story. And most of them, you'll never hear. Same with the horses. If you've ever been near the casino in Hot Springs, you've probably seen them. Oaklawn. It's not just a casino. It's a racetrack. And those horses are on another level. Trained, precise, fast in a way that doesn't even look real. But what's interesting is what happens when they're not racing. They're just there, walking around, training, existing, not performing, not competing, just being what they are. And there's something about that sticks with you. Because everything doesn't have to be a performance. Not everything has to be optimized for attention. Some things just exist, whether you're watching or not. Kind of like this video. Because at this point, if you're still here, you're not here for the camera. You're not here for production quality. You're here because something about this keeps pulling you forward. Even if you don't fully know why. And maybe that's the same reason those old stories stick. Because they don't need to be proven. They just need to be told. Here's another random fact. Hot Springs used to have illegal gambling operations everywhere. Before it became official. Before the casinos. There were hidden rooms, backdoor setups, places you wouldn't expect. And people just knew. It wasn't advertised. It wasn't obvious. But if you were in the right circle, you'd find it. Again, layers. Everything here has layers. Here's another one. Arkansas has over 3,000 documented caves. And some of them go so deep that exploration teams still haven't mapped them completely. Think about that. In a world where we have satellites, GPS, full maps of entire cities, there are still places underground here we don't fully understand. And honestly, that feels like a perfect metaphor. Because not everything is meant to be fully known. Some things you just experience. Just like this. A random video, shot on a Temu camera, talking about lakes and stories that may or may not be real. And somehow, it all connects. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe that's the point. Because not everything needs to be perfectly structured. Sometimes, it just needs to flow. From one idea to the next. From one story to another. From something real to something questionable. And back again. Just like Arkansas. Just like those stories. Just like this. And if you've made it this far, you're not just watching anymore. You're part of it. Which is kind of crazy, when you think about how this started. Cheap camera, random idea, no plan. And now, this.
swear
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Vice President Johnson, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chief Justice, President Eisenhower, Vice President Nixon, President Truman, Reverend clergy, fellow citizens. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty. This much we pledge and more. To those old allies whose cultural and spiritual origins we share, we pledge the loyalty of faithful friends. United, there is little we cannot do in a host of cooperative ventures. Divided, there is little we can do, for we dare not meet a powerful challenge at odds and split asunder. To those new states whom we welcome to the ranks of the free, we pledge our word that one form of colonial control shall not have passed away merely to be replaced by a far more iron tyranny. We shall not always expect to find them supporting our view, but we shall always hope to find them strongly supporting their own freedom and to remember that in the past, those who foolishly sought power by riding the back of the tiger ended up inside. To those people in the huts and villages of half the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves for whatever period is required, not because the communists may be doing it, not because we seek their votes, but because it is right. If a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. To our sister republics south of our border, we offer a special pledge to convert our good words into good deeds, in a new alliance for progress, to assist free men and free governments in casting off the chains of poverty. But this peaceful revolution of hope cannot become the prey of hostile powers. Let all our neighbors know that we shall join with them to oppose aggression or subversion anywhere in the Americas. And let every other power know that this hemisphere intends to remain the master of its own house. To that World Assembly of Sovereign States, the United Nations, our last best hope, in an age where the instruments of war have far outpaced the instruments of peace, we renew our pledge of support to prevent it from becoming merely a forum for invective, to strengthen its shield of the new and the weak, and to enlarge the area in which its writ may run. Finally, to those nations who would make themselves our adversary, we offer not a pledge, but a request that both sides begin anew the quest for peace. Before the dark powers of destruction, unleashed by science, engulf all humanity in planned or accidental self-destruction, we dare not tempt them with weakness, for only when our arms are sufficient beyond doubt can we be certain beyond doubt that they will never be employed. But neither can two great and powerful groups of nations take comfort from our present course, both sides overburdened by the cost of modern weapons, both rightly alarmed by the steady spread of the deadly atom, yet both racing to alter that uncertain balance of terror that stays the hand of mankind's final war. So let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Let both sides explore what problems unite us, instead of belaboring those problems which divide us. Let both sides, for the first time, formulate serious and precise proposals for the inspection and control of arms, and bring the absolute power to destroy other nations under the absolute control of all nations. Let both sides seek to invoke the wonders of science instead of its terrors. Together, let us explore the stars, conquer the deserts, eradicate disease, tap the ocean depth, and encourage the arts and commerce. Let both sides unite to heed in all corners of the earth the command of Isaiah to undo the heavy burden and let the oppressed go free. And if a beachhead of cooperation may push back the jungle of suspicion, let both sides join in creating a new endeavor, not a new balance of power, but a new world of law, where the strong are just and the weak secure and the peace preserved. All this will not be finished in the first 100 days, nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration, nor even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin. In your hands, my fellow citizens, more than mine,